Welcome to the Soccer Card Collective, episode 4, A Golden Age of Panini Soccer. In this episode, I am going to discuss what I refer to as a golden age of Panini Soccer. It's a moniker that I've seen thrown around by collectors for a while now, primarily dealing or describing the time period from 2014, essentially starting with World Cup Prism, all the way to the sets from 2018. And that essentially coincides around the time when, the soccer card market started booming. And you may or may not include the 2019 Panini Premier League set kind of at the tail end of this golden era, but primarily what I'm going to be looking at is the sets from 2014 to 2018. And just from a general framework, the reason I view this time period as a golden age for Panini Soccer is due to the fact this was an era where they were experimenting a lot with different products and aesthetics, and the print runs and parallel structures were very modest, and when you opened a box, hits, you could expect hits, as opposed to kind of the more, since the boom, the configurations where hits are really few and far between. You may see a lot of color, but those the serial numbering on the color you get could be to very high numbers relative to what you got during this time period from 2014 to 18. I'm going to go through some of the sets that and kind of describe what they bring to kind of this golden age. The sets that I talked about in the last episode 3, the dawn of the modern era, kind of describe the earlier sets, which I won't go back into. That episode, we went through 2014 Panini World Cup Prism, 2015 Donruss, and 2015 Select, which were the first modern sets, and so they are part of what I consider the golden age. But a lot of the sets that I'm going to talk about in this episode were sets that maybe some of them were a continuation of those earlier sets I talked about. Others were one-off sets that weren't repeated, or at least weren't repeated in the same license or configuration in future years. And some of the sets from this era were never they were never repeated, or they took a hiatus and have subsequently come back in the last few years with different licenses and configurations. But part of why I really want to highlight this era in soccer card collecting too is that my own observation, and I've heard it independently discussed by other collectors in the soccer card space, is this era feels very reminiscent of the era of sports cards for the big 3 American sports, Major League Baseball, NBA, and NFL, that happened in the late 90s, really beginning with the the rise in serial numbered cards during that time period, where the manufacturers experimented with different serial number and product structures and configurations. It's not an exact match, because a lot of the configurations used in this era of soccer were had already been fleshed out in those sports between the 90s and 2014, when I say this era began. However, just based off of the the print runs and just like the players included in a lot of these sets weren't these were their first truly modern sets. And so it really became, a very concentrated period of time, an opportunity to collect some players whose, careers were winding down, or it was, toward the end of their stint at certain clubs and things like that. So it was just like a really concentrated period of really um, highly creative, kind of product configurations, as well as, players whose, rookie had, years were long before this era. All right, so without, much further ado, I'll go into some of those sets. And like I said, I won't go repeat, the sets that I talked about in the last episode in the dawn of the modern era. But the first set, as a continuation, again, I'll be using either, Cardboard Connection or Beckett, just to kind of have a visual, kind of representation of the, the checklist as I go through some of these sets, so you can follow along. So, as a continuation of 2015, 16 Select, I did briefly mention in the last episode, in the 2016-17 version of Select, we moved on from the national team licenses to having a mix of the, national team and club configurations, depending on the level of Select. So this was the first year in Select Soccer where they had the base set included 3 different tiers, including the terrace, mezzanine, and field level. And in this, in this configuration, the way they did it was that the terrace and mezzanine again used the club. The national team licenses and jerseys, while the field level introduced the club licenses to to the Select product. The whole checklist for the field levels did not necessarily have clubs only, but any of the leagues where they had the club license, they did include the the club in the in this tier of Select. Most notably, the Premier League was not one of the leagues that had the licenses, so all of the Premier League players of this time period were in their national team kits if they were in the field level SKU. But much like the 2015 version, this was kind of just a an evolution of that. Like I said, with the 300 card base set, which was 1 to 100 terrace, 101 to 200 mezzanine, and the field level 201 to 300. One of the other notable things about the tiers in this iteration of Select was that many of the parallels, essentially all of them except for the multicolor prism in the mezzanine section, were actually die cuts. So that really distinguishes it from the terrace and field level, and that neither of those parallel structures had the die cut configuration. And then notably in the field level configuration, the white, the copper, the gold, the green, and the black also had what we refer to as the X-Fractor SKU. And just as a illustrative point, that these are the only like Select cards that I have from this set in my PC for Wayne Rooney. Again, he's a Premier League player at this time, so since they didn't have the license, he was in his England kit. I would have preferred him in his Manchester kit, but considering they were still beautiful cards, I still still got them. Last episode I did show my black prism. Just figured I'd show all the parallels and kind of how they look from the field level. Green out of 5, gold out of 10, the camo out of 20, the tie-dye out of 30, the bronze out of 49, and the white prism out of 99. So that's, they do have the multicolor unnumbered that was the from I think it was all retail. All those were from the retail versions, and and so but yeah, and so the other, as you can see, like, kind of, scrolling through the the visual depictions of the cards from this set, the the terrace kind of showed a zoomed in version of the player. The mezzanine kind of had a somewhat zoomed, partially zoomed in, partial body shot, and then the field level really got a full body kind of profile of the players. And so, that's just a slightly different aesthetic. You could kind of tell the difference. And like I said, with the mezzanine, most of those parallels were, die cut. And I think it, when they say, common, uncommon, rare in terms of these, that's just like the base card. So even a base card from the field level is pretty difficult to come by. So, any of the non-numbered stuff, kind of, the field level is rare. Obviously, when you get the numbered stuff, a 10, if there's 10 field level and there's 10 terrace, it's like, it's the same number. So the rarity isn't any different, kind of, if you break it down that way. Again, outside of the, just the base set, you started to see autograph cards of a lot of players. Christian Pulisic was starting to become a big chase for United States men's national team collectors, as well as, they had autograph. It was pretty variable, like how many autographs of each player there were, but started to be lots of big names in this, and with different parallel configurations. That you kind of have to go through the checklist to see how many of each player had in different in these different parallel configurations. And again, Pulisic, being a popular American, was in many of these SKUs. And you can go just tons of autographs. We started to see jersey patches in a lot of these as well. Again, these are all sticker autos. And then with the jersey autographs, you do start seeing some big names in the jersey autograph section, including Cristiano Ronaldo, Neymar, Luis Suarez, Harry Kane, just to name a few of the folks you could find in this. So started, tons of big names in here. Clearly Messi is in, all of the base sets, highly collectible in all of these, and all of those different tiers. But so that's, kind of a general overview of 2016 Select. If you want to dig into the checklist, find things to chase, but really, even just like the base checklist, I think for a lot of collectors, the shiny aesthetic over, people prefer to collect a lot of times over, the autograph cards, just partially because they're sticker autos, and then the aesthetic of the, a lot of the, the base setters, just, more pleasing to a lot of collectors. But I think the autographs obviously, are cool as well, if that is the kind of thing you look for in a set. But yeah, as we move on to the next set, the natural next set to talk about is going to be its counterpart the following year, which was the 2017-18 iteration of Select. Similar in many respects, in that there were the terrace mezzanine and field level configurations. Again, the mezzanine, a lot of the parallels were die cuts, and as before, the terrace and the mezzanine were all the national team licenses, while the field level, introduced the club teams that had the license for the leagues. We did start to see some on-card autographs included within the set, which I think is fairly notable, for various players. Most of them were horizontal cards, but they were. I think that makes the autographs from this set a little more collectible from my perspective than than its counterpart from 2016. And the other notable thing for modern collectors, this is the set that kabooms were first introduced into soccer products. So there were no numbered parallels for the kabooms, but given the relatively limited print run, the print run on these kabooms is far less than any of the subsequent pack pulled iterations when the products really were started to be printed toward much higher levels. So that's a really cool chase before before the phenomenon of kaboom really had taken off in soccer. I think in other sports it had started to take off somewhat, but yeah, so fun chase. I'll go through again: 1 to 200 terrace, 101 to 200 mezzanine, and 201 to 300 field level. The parallel constructors did start to creep up, including parallels up to 299 in the 250 range. However, the field level configuration did still only go up to the 99 white, as well as like the I think the retail SKU checkerboard, and then the silver, which were the unnumbered versions. But essentially, for the field level, the configuration stayed the same as the previous year, which was nice. That kept it very exclusive to find the parallels. Interruption there, but so the base set was pretty similar to the previous year, except you will notice that the field level this year had a horizontal configuration, which was kind of really distinguishes it from its counterparts. And some people aren't all about horizontal cards. I kind of like the fact that it's something a little bit new and different that you don't see in other years. I only have one card, I think, from the whole set, even though I do like the whole set. It just doesn't happen to have a lot of the players that I chase. To be honest, I picked up this one when I saw it available, just because I really wanted to have one of these in hand, and that was, I just picked up a gold Arwen Robin. Mostly, I really wanted to get a feeling for it's really the X Factor aesthetic on these, and the golds look fantastic, like they do with a lot of things. But that X Factor aesthetic really is a great feature of the I know for the lower numbered for the parallels for this that have that aesthetic, including the green and black, and the white and copper as it did before. The only one that actually was added into this configuration was the zebra configuration, which kind of the dawn of the animal prince, if you will, in soccer. Not a purple platypus exactly, but yeah, so it wasn't too plentiful at that point, but it really kind of introduced that wrinkle that's kind of mocked in some circles in terms of how they start adding different random prints and configurations to it. Like I said, lot of historic, post-playing days players in this set as well. The historic signatures, and like I said, which one? The ones that I really think, they have some patch. I really, if you're interested in kind of a lot of these, really digging into the weeds of this, I would go through the checklist because it's just a really expansive checklist. They actually had some, prominent U.S. women's national team stars added in this to add a little bit of chase to the women's national team, which was pretty popular from a fan's perspective in the United States. And like I said, the select signatures are the ones they have just kind of the unnumbered checklist, as well as a 1 of 1 black checklist. Certain players have the gold, and again, you have to kind of go to the checklist to see which players have which, because they randomly skip certain, or random players don't actually have every parallel configuration with these. So you really have to go to the checklist to see which ones are available in the gold and the black. But again, that's have it on card, shiny card. That's it's rare nowadays. You don't see, there are not many on cards in the shiny card, on card autographs in the shiny card sets. In the modern era, most of them are stickers. I think a lot of that probably is logistics, and so yeah, I think the insert checklist, the inserts for the set are really nice. The equalizer, really popular inserts. And then, but probably the one that most people would be interested in kind of reading up on and understanding is the Kaboom checklist. Some vertical, some horizontal, all in their national team kits. For the most part, it's a who's who of players from their countries, and as everyone knows, Cristiano Ronaldo and the Messi are really sought after, and they're kind of really seeing a boom in popularity recently. But I mean, other players in this set are just really who's who of this era as well, including Gareth Bale, Kevin De Bruyne, Antoine Griezmann, Gigi Buffon, Robert Lewandowski, Luka Modric, Robin van Persie, James Rodriguez for my Colombian collectors out there, Didier Drogba, and then, for us North American fans, Christian Pulisic and Chicharito, Javier Hernandez, were also in this set, which are, big time collector, chases for those fan bases. But yeah, again, you can go through. I mean, there aren't really that many inserts, to be honest, from this set. But I think the most notable one to take notice of is this being the first year of Kaboom. Not that much of this product is being opened anymore, but yeah, I imagine the print run just from this year is really low compared to the other years of Kaboom, as I said before. All right. So moving on, we're going to start moving into some of the other sets, the ones that are more unique, or first appearance type sets from this era. Just kind of in chronological order. First one I was going to talk about, it's a set I really don't know a ton about, and I know certain people. It's a really, really aesthetically pleasing set from the pictures. I've actually never seen this set but it's the 2016 Panini Spectra card. It's a 100 card base set with a very limited numbered parallel structure. 75 is the highest numbered parallel. It also has die cuts mixed with the non-die cut parallels. And this one, the color is a little unusual, a little bit different than a lot of Panini products. The out of 10 is orange. For the non-die cut, the 1 of 1 is a gold. For the die cut, it's a black 1 of 1, and a green out of 5. So a little bit different, more unique, parallel structure configuration, but that's kind of fun and something to lean into. It's an entirely national team licensed checklist. Kind of a random smattering of countries. I didn't really see a kind of a pattern in terms of who and why they included a lot of players. Lots of some really unusual players included in the set. So if you're kind of from a smaller nation collecting community, they have autographs from Albanian players, more obscure Polish and North Irish players. So it's kind of an interesting set, the checklist. I really don't know how they came up with a lot of the names from this, but I don't know, if you're, like I said, from one of these smaller nations, you might want to look through maybe some of the only appearances from this era of some certain players from national teams that you enjoy. But a lot of the same types of things: sticker autos, jersey patches, some similar things that you see in a lot of the select sets. So nothing real groundbreaking in the set, except for in the base set, kind of the the alternative parallel structure, like I said. And I said aesthetically, from an aesthetic standpoint, I think this is a great set. And if you wanted to lean in, to finding cards for your PC player, or even putting together runs within the set of a player, it could be, if you're looking for something more niche and off the radar, this could be a fun set to dive into. Then moving on, the next one chronologically that I was going to talk about is going back to actually the it's another brand that we've seen before, but it's actually through a new license, and that is the 2016 Panini Prism Euro soccer set. And the interesting thing about this set is that I just don't seem to see as much of this as its 2014 counterpart. It could be that because values have increased with the 2014 version, more have kind of surfaced, but it's interesting to me where this product is, because there's it's a decent 250 card base set, so there are a lot of these cards out there, presumably somewhere. But if you look at pop reports for a lot of the graded copies, they're still pretty low relative to the 2014 Prism World Cup. So this is like one of those mysteries. When you get these worldwide releases and collectors all over the world collecting these, they can get kind of, they're scattered all over the planet, and the markets aren't, the marketplaces aren't efficient worldwide. eBay is kind of still is probably the main one that people from around the world can have access to, but a lot of people, it's pretty cumbersome to ship internationally and things like that. So they may just be on domestic markets. And I've seen a lot, with card hobby being introduced a few years ago, some of the collectors in China have gotten more access to a larger base of audience of sellers. And so I think that's led to some discovery of some sets that were previously pretty scarce. But yeah, the discovery of this set, specifically, is just, it's just, I don't see a lot coming out there. And I recently picked up my first card from this copy, which I'll show you in a moment. But the parallel configuration for this set is starting to look pretty. It's pretty similar in some respects to 2014, but there are a few nuances. The blue in this case was out of 249. It was out of 199 in 2014. The red prisms out of 149 which is essentially the same as 2014. Purples out of 99 is the same as 2014. Orange Prism out of 20 is different. Light blue out of 15 is present. They got rid of the green crystals in this case, but in this set, the out of 5, they changed to a green prism where it was the gold power out of 5 in the 2014. The familiar gold prisms out of 10 and the black prism 1 of 1s, none of which have the any sort of kind of X factor or finite aesthetic. The 2014 blacks had the finite aesthetic, and obviously the gold powers had the superfractor aesthetic in those sets, but they didn't really include that. A little bit disappointing, but the gold prisms are very recognizable for all the fans of. And then the design is essentially the same design as that was used for 2015 NBA and NFL. So for cross sport comparison, which is I really, that's 2015 is probably it's a really classic prism design for those sports. Where the gold border, or the border, I guess, is really the very characteristic of the prism design that started with the 2012 in those sports. But as far as parallels, again, there's nothing groundbreaking as far as the kind of the sticker auto configurations. You can dig into the checklist yourself. Pretty complex, wide variety of players as in previous. And like I said, this is the Euro, so these are all European teams who are part of the tournament. Cristiano Ronaldo in this, obviously no Messi, so maybe it's not as the lack of Messi sometimes will kind of decrease the visibility on a product. But having Cristiano Ronaldo, this was the year that Portugal won the Euro, so you could say that makes it a desirable year to find Cristiano Ronaldo. I think any year where you have a gold prism of Cristiano, or gold or black, or to be honest, any parallel, for Cristiano Ronaldo, I think it's going to be a popular card. I don't think it, just because he won the Euro, it should be any more. It should be more popular than 2014. I think 2014 will have its premium. Personally, I would prefer 2016 Euro Cristiano Ronaldo over 2018 Prism, though. Just because of the significance of him winning it, and to be honest, I think it's a better looking card than 2018. So, for those reasons, it would be a notch above in my mind. But like I said, if you're a Cristiano Ronaldo collector, you probably would just try to collect as many of any of those years as possible. But, not, to be honest, I won't dig too far into the insert and parallel structure. Again, like I said, I mean, the lure to me is classic prism design, and just it's a really, the discovery on it is really low at this point. And the card I picked up, for my PC players, as I've been showing you the last couple of episodes, Wayne Rooney. This is one of my more recent pickups. If you follow me on my Instagram channel, Mad City Collector. This is the gold out of 10, and it's a PSA 8, but it is the only gold graded copy by PSA. So, pop one, it's just exclamation point when if I was trying to sell it, to really highlight the pop one nature of it. But it doesn't really matter to me. PSA 8's a good grade for these cards that are really like that for me. The centering for a lot of these cards, I think the centering kind of knocked it down at least probably one grade. Centering is not great on a lot of the cards from this set. But yeah, only one graded. I mean, when I go back and look at Card Ladder and the sales history of these, I think that exact PSA 8 copy was sold as a raw a year and a half ago. But before that sale and the sale where I bought it, the last public sale was back in 2017, and I think there were 2 or 3 different copies that sold raw at that time. And so we know they're pulled from packs. We know they're out there somewhere, but haven't been graded. So, anyone's guess, whether they'll surface. Maybe, people are waiting for a renaissance of some of these cards to put on the market, or maybe people just love collecting them and no plans to let them go. All right, so that's kind of a fun set, still under the radar from my perspective. So now I kind of move on to some of the more higher end sets. I did talk about 2016 Flawless in the last set, but I didn't talk about another high end set from that time period, which has really become popular, and it does have some features to it that are fairly unique to that SKU and that or to that set, which is 2016 Panini Noir. Very recognizable from the design of these cards. It's, they have a base set numbered to 200. The highest serial numbered card is, it's a very basic set. The base card's serial numbered to 75. They have a platinum out of 10, black and white, and a gold out of 10 in the color only. Really stripped down as far as like the base set. And the autos too, you kind of have to go to the checklist. Every player kind of has a, for a lot of these different parallels have a different, serial number for them. So it's kind of, you have to be aware of that when you're one of them pops up, and that's all there are. And and for some of them that's just all they have. Like they don't have a 1 of 1. It's just one number and that's it. Memorabilia cards, again, a lot of these are at a 65, but some are less, so you kind of have to know. The club signatures, they have club and national team, which is a nice like wrinkle for a lot of players. A lot of Messi autographs from this set that are really sought after. The club signatures, a lot of them are out of 99. Messi's only out of 40. So, the most popular chase has like a relatively low serial number. Cristiano Ronaldo's out of 33. Random, no idea why they do 33. I guess they can only get them to sign 33 cards. Same thing very similar thing with, country signatures. Messi for this one is numbered out of 40 again. Cristiano Ronaldo out of 25. A lot of Pele's are out of 99. Really great looking vertical on-card autos. They have a legendary signature set, which is only a 5-card checklist, which is interesting. Clint Dempsey out of 3. That's kind of crazy. Messi again out of 25. Messi out of 60. Cristiano Ronaldo out of 25. So, in this one, the Cristiano Ronaldo way rarer. The one set that really has, it seemed to capture a lot of collectors' kind of attention, both for aesthetic and prices, is the Spotlight signatures, numbered out of 25. I think, if I remember correctly, Messi was a redemption out of this, and it's hard to know how many of these actually ended up getting redeemed from packs. There are quite a few out there. A lot of these have been graded if they have been pulled. These sell for, these command a really kind of big price for a serial number card out of 25. Outpacing a lot of 1-of-1s in a lot of cases. So this is an argument for a card that kind of has gained a underground narrative among collectors, that it really kind of pushed it past its the limitation of the out of 25 serial number. Again, going through the checklist for a set like this to really understand what it is. But this is a set, when you go for the big name players in the set, it really goes up. But if you go through the checklist and your PC player is in here, this is like a really relatively, it's like you can still get these for very attainable prices at this point. Now, there's a lot of great players in this set. Again, like I said, that a lot of the same names that have been included in all these sets over this area. Panini really kind of loaded these sets from this era with a lot of the big name players, obviously to kind of get people to buy into these products and whatnot. But if you're looking for some of the coolest cards for a lot of these players at the a lot of times at the end of their run, or in the middle of their prime, I mean, a lot of these sets are just, treasure troves of great cards for these players. So really great set, high end. Not quite, it's Flawless had, a little more depth to it as far as the patches and things like that. The soul of the game. It's nothing kind of to that level as far as a memorabilia piece within the card, but the autographs, arguably more aesthetically, pleasing on these cards than than the Flawless, in my opinion. But to each their own. Other people might disagree, and they prefer kind of the classic white background, with the autos. All right, moving along. The next set, kind of chronologically, that I was going to talk about in this lineage was, let's see, what was it? Nobility was the one I think I was going to talk about next. Nobility is 2017. Nobility is an interesting set. It's a slightly different goal than a lot of the other sets I talked about, in that it is primarily geared toward autographs of legend, and really geared toward on-card autographs, which is, again, like I've highlighted some of the sets that do have on-card autographs, the high-end sets like Flawless and Noir. But the on-card orders are few and far between on the the shiny cards from this era. But the the designs on these are interesting, and the base set has a base set checklist of 100. If you look at the checklist, it is mostly retired legends, but they did sneak in some contemporary players like Messi and Ronaldo, as well as like Wayne Rooney was kind of really toward the end of his playing career, at least in the Premier League at this point. They snuck him in there too, but like I said, mostly retired players in the checklist. Crescent signatures are some of probably the most sought after cards, and they're shiny on card autographs. Again, these are, most of the cards in the set are the national team licenses. So certain players, Eric Cantona, me personally, I'd prefer him in in Manchester United, but it's a great headshot autograph of a great player from that United era. And the different players were included. I think pretty much all of the players were included in each of these different color configurations. There's the unnumbered, the orange, let's see here, the bronze, the gold, and the platinum were the configurations for these. Golds look really nice. Platinum, nice kind of blue color to it. But yeah, and then the iconic signatures. It looks like some of these are sticker autos. Players have lots of different number configurations up to 300. Some as low as 15, and all of them should have a platinum 1 of 1 as far as those. So it's just interesting, like numbering, like again, kind of just this almost haphazard number configuration where you really have to dig into the set to understand what's out there. Going through them, you can check out the checklist yourself, but I will say the one insert set that is one of my favorites from any of the insert sets from this era, or to be honest, any insert in the modern era of soccer cards, is the for club and country set, because so it marries kind of your love for a player in their club with their country, so and interestingly enough, Ryan Giggs and Wayne Rooney in Manchester United kits are in this checklist. I am not entirely sure why they were not able to be used in the Manchester United jersey in any of the other years, but I'll take it as far as a collector goes. And when I saw there's like the base car, there's the base version which kind of has just like a refractor, prism design. And there's a gold out of 10 and platinum 101. So these are really exclusive, especially when you get into the numbered parallels. But yeah, you can collect Messi for club and pair it with his for country. Kind of a really great kind of, like I said, marriage of those two like different auras of players. 10 card set: Carlos Pujols, Ryan Giggs, Karl-Heinz, I don't know how to pronounce it, Wayne Rooney, Luis Figo, Javier Zanetti, Thierry Henry, Diego Maradona, Cristiano Ronaldo, and Lionel Messi. So for the most part, just really legendary players in that insert set. But again, I'll the other inserts, I won't dig too deep into it, but it's a very limited print run set. So it makes it really kind of niche and kind of fun to chase. Really hard to find a lot of these cards. This is a set, one of the sets where I do own a copy, as I was kind of alluded to it. But it is I have the gold for club Rooney. I will probably try to pair up, if I find a copy of his for country in a gold. Love to pair it up with this at some point. But having him in the Manchester United kit was really a high priority when I saw this become available. But yeah, so a really fun set, especially for the autographs. Some people really love that kind of simple color aesthetic for the base cards as well. Kind of almost a real classic, almost throwback design. But all right, so moving on, the next one kind of in chronological order that I wanted to talk about, and this is a set that, so Nobility was a one-off. It hasn't been repeated. I don't know if it doesn't seem like they'll ever repeat it again, but yeah, I guess never say never if they, are looking for ideas. But since they've lost a lot of their licenses, they may not be jumping into, producing, rehashing things. But okay, but the next one I wanted to talk about was the 2017 Revolution. So they call it 2017. It does depict, players in their 2016-17 teams. That based off of Mohamed Salah and Neymar, who were Neymar's depicted in his Barcelona, which his last season for them was 2016-17, and Mo Salah was in a Roma kit, which he last played for them in 2016-17. So it does depict players in their 2016-17 kits, even though it's labeled as a 2017 product. 200 card base set. And it's so this set is really interesting, I guess, for me, as for the fact that it really has a really unique design. It's not it's, I guess, what you would call almost like more of a paper-based card with a foil aesthetic rather than a chromium-based card. It is a product that's seen in other sports, so it's not a brand new set. Nobility, as far as I'm aware, it's not. That doesn't exist in any other sports. If it does, it's not one I've heard of. Revolution does exist in other sports, but this is the only year where Revolution had the kind of the worldwide / pan-European checklist and licenses. It did start to produce with its Premier League license in 2020, which continued for several years. That I think had a lot of a lot of it was released in Asia, so you do seem to see a lot of it there for the Premier League at least. But this set, this was kind of a broad release set, and you do see this around to a certain extent. The notable parallel that is really sought after by collectors both for its rarity and kind of aesthetic that most people have heard of, is the Galactic Parallel. It is an unnumbered parallel. It was listed as one in every 128 packs. I've heard people kind of guess on what the print run is, whether it's like in the 15, 20. I'm thinking based off of graded pops on some of them, I think it's possible that the actual true print run is maybe closer to the 25 to 30 range potentially. There are numbered parallels, the Cosmic out of 100, Magna out of 49, and the Disco out of 25. But it does seem that people, when they go after something from the set, the Galactic is really what they go out there. And I think it's largely an aesthetic thing. And I'll show you a couple of copies of the Galactic that I picked up. But for Messi and Ronaldo, you do have seen, like I said, maybe like 15 to 20 out there that have been graded. It's hard to know how many have been cracked out of BGS and maybe resubmitted with PSA. So maybe it could be like falsely elevated for that reason, but it's always hard to know, especially since these are non-numbered parallels, like I said, for the Galactics. And yeah, I mean, especially the Messi and Ronaldo's really go for strong prices. But for non-Messi players, I mean, some players barely have any public sales, and are just really difficult to find. So I don't know if it's a fact that obviously people see Messi and Ronaldo and they see the value, and they bring things to market, and maybe it's not worth it for the players who aren't quite as up there as far as price. And yeah, it's hard to know where a lot of these are. Especially with the Galactics, you just don't see many of a lot of the top players. It is a really bizarre checklist is the only thing I'll say about this one. Tons of players from lots of European clubs that, unless you're a real diehard for a lot of these leagues, there's a good chance you may have never even heard of the names in this, 200 card checklist. There are autographs in this, but like I said, Galactic really kind of steals the show with a lot of these things. Does have, Christian Pulisic within it, which is, he's kind of, again, notable if you may have seen these cards of his if you follow any United States national team collectors, or if you are one, obviously. But the showstopper, stargazing, all of those are really collecting the Galactics from these, even are really rare to find those parallels. Obviously the checklists are smaller, so I'm not sure how much harder or easier to find than the Galactic in the base set, because the base set's so large. But yeah, this is a really interesting set for, like I said, from the standpoint of the aesthetic. It's something different. It's like more paper based foil, and as far as kind of the shine to it and pattern, you could equate it to like the aesthetic appeal of something like a Kaboom, in the sense that it almost has this like star shaped background to it. It does have the photographic kind of quality to it rather than like kind of the art quality, but from an aesthetic shine perspective, it's really hard to kind of beat it. So the two cards from this set that I got, two Barcelona players, Iniesta and Neymar. Iniesta, obviously really fun player right at the tail end of his, kind of Barcelona playing days. Just trying to give you a feel for that crazy kind of diamond star aesthetic. There's not any cards that really replicate this in any of the other sets that I've talked about, or I think in any other sets that have been produced. Like I said, maybe you could say that something like Kaboom has that kind of almost star-shaped quality to the shine, which is somewhat similar. But yeah, like I said, I've barely seen any public sales for either of those cards. The Iniesta maybe the only public sale I've seen was the one that I had, and then there are a couple Neymar sales I've seen, but yeah, I don't see people post them. I don't see them for sale, so really hard to come by. So if you do see them, it's a really fun one to pick up. All right, moving along. Like I said, chronologically, I will go. I think we're out to 2018. as far as the run of cards I wanted to talk about. And so this is another one-off, kind of like Nobility. This is one that we have not seen again. And this is one that has, it is another. It's a unique style of card, and a unique, just something unique. If you're looking into something, niche and one-off, like no other years of it type of configuration, this is definitely a set to look into, and that is the 2018 Panini Treble. It is a club licensed product. This is 2018-19 was the first year for Cristiano Ronaldo in his Juve kit. So if you're a Madridista, that's maybe not as but if you're a Cristiano Ronaldo fan, it does tell the story of kind of his career. He did have a successful stint with Juventus, so definitely still a very collectible card, despite the fact that he's not in his Real Madrid kit any longer. It's the parallel configuration is probably one of the more interesting things about this. The base cards have a nice, photographic design, kind of reminiscent of a lot of the pre-modern sets, even, I would say. So it kind of has that throwback appeal for at least the base versions of a lot of these cards. I will say the one interesting thing they did, instead of the RC, like they did have an RC logo, but they also mentioned that it was the Panini Premier, so it's like almost like first Panini card type of thing, which is, I think, an interesting moniker. But it seems that the RC kind of designation is kind of caught on and will continued into the future, just because it's just such a recognizable hobby. Just trademark type of thing. So the base set, 200 card base set. Again, a lot of the big clubs. Interestingly enough, there is Chelsea. They did have the license to produce Chelsea cards for this set, but that was the only Premier League team that they were able to produce. I'm not entirely sure why. I don't know if it had to do with something like a Club World Cup or something like that. They were able to sneak them in, type of thing. But Kylian Mbappe is certainly, this is, one of the first sets he was in. I didn't mention him, but yeah, in 2017-18 in Select, that was one of the first sets where he was in it too, and a lot of people consider that his rookie card in his. But this is another set, early years, rookie adjacent, I guess you could say. Kylian Mbappe. Cards, as well as having, like I said, Cristiano Ronaldo in Juventus kit and Messi still in his Barcelona kit. Another who's who checklist, a lot of great stars from this era. Some lesser known people who I'm less familiar with, but again, opportunity if you're a fan of clubs for some of the the big clubs, but in relatively smaller leagues type of player. But yeah. So like I said, like I was saying, the interesting thing about this, let's see, do we have a good picture of it here, is the parallel structure. The parallel structure for the base set: blue out of 75, purple out of 49, gold out of 25, green out of 10, and platinum 1 of 1. So slightly different color scheme, but the unique thing about the parallels is that the parallels are a what they call etched foil, micro etched foil. It's it's not quite the it's essentially a full bleed foil. I don't. Do we have a good picture of it here? I almost want to go. Yeah, I feel like I'm going to search it here as we speak here, because I think it's definitely worth looking at some of these. So Panini Treble cards, great show content, of course. So to give you an idea where, okay, so all right, so here's the Ronaldo, the Mbappe you can see. So it is a full bleed foil, which is cool, reminiscent of other kind of foil sets, at the time, there was a period where people compared it to the aesthetic of, the 97, 98 PMG or the 97 PMGs in basketball and NFL because of the kind of the full bleed color or color foil. It has more of kind of a starburst pattern. Doesn't obviously have like kind of the the sci-fi kind of theme to the background, but if you do like kind of that different foil aesthetic, this is really unique in this era for having that. So I think for certain collectors looking to dig into the more niche, unique kind of beautiful cards, the that kind of that characteristic of it is really highly desirable for a lot of people. Let's see, past it. But yeah, so I mean, I'd say that's probably the biggest chase for this is the base set parallels. I think, I mean, there are other things that some autograph patch cards and whatnot, but I think the real star of it is kind of that base parallel structure that people like to very achievable rainbow. The gold out of 25 is higher than most Panini products, lower than the Topps products, but kind of a it's low numbered, but still achievable. And then the platinum 1-on-1, you see it in a couple other sets, but that has a nice like a blue aesthetic to it, or that I guess platinum blue type aesthetic. All right, so the last couple sets I would talk about are I being interested in shiny cards. Me personally, I have not dug into these outside of just kind of running through some of the checklists. And I do see these cards for sale not infrequently. One of them is the Panini Eminence, which if you've ever seen one of these, you're really not going to forget it, in the sense that these cards have the let's see if I can find it. Not that one. Oh yeah, here it is. Have the classic gold pens. Has some old legends, like the Maradonas in this are really cool. And the one main problem with this set is that Lionel Messi, who's ordinarily the biggest chase for these, the autograph in this one is questionable and rumored to have been his brother signing for him, because if you are familiar with his autograph and how the loop from his L goes, it's just like a different look than most of his other autographs, including most of the in-person ones that people know that he signs. So if this is him, I think the damage has been done with a lot of collectors, in the sense that there's enough skepticism about the auto that it's kind of really tamped down the upside potential for a lot of these, for most collectors who are looking to spend big money. Because I don't know, if the narrative kind of grows on this, like you could really get burned if you are putting up the kind of money for this that you are with a lot of somewhat similar echelon, like high-end cards. But yeah, it's got a great base check mix of retired and some contemporary players. No Cristiano Ronaldo. I think he is in some of the checklists. But yeah, so anyway, great list, great checklist again. If you really like that gold kind of pen, this is a really kind of cool one. It's kind of like almost like the noir, noir has some of the gold as well. And it's, if you're a real autograph seeker, you really love how the autograph kind of adds to the aesthetic of the card. This is a kind of a great set to go after. Little diamonds in the cards kind of gimmicky in my opinion, but adds a little extra like flair to a lot of these cards. But yeah, so another high end, kind of one of the early high end sets. They released it again. Did this again for 2022 World Cup. So it wasn't a one off, but this was kind of the first of its kind. The other high end one that kind of was a first, starting first in in soccer at that time. That was probably the biggest brand, as far as autograph patch cards go in other sports, is the National Treasures. I have not. I don't see a ton of these out in the world. This is one where I'm not, hugely impressed with with the design they had for this one. But the National Treasure brand has cachet. The checklist is has good player, has lots of good players in it. But lots of, for an expensive box, you could be pulling some names that don't have nearly, for the price of the box, don't have nearly enough cachet for the box prices. But yeah, if you're into National Treasures, you're into the white, the white autograph space with autographs and your players on the checklist. Definitely a cool set to check out. I don't see a ton of this out there, to be honest, being sold. Like I said, I'm not really looking for it, so maybe more of it's out there than I am aware of. But yeah, another first iteration of a brand that is astronaut, crazily popular in other sports. There are sticker autos on some of these, so that does detract from those cards, at least. But a set I at least wanted to mention. All right, so the last set this is like the second. This last set I was talking about is the second edition of kind of a set I've already talked about, and that it was a set that kind of went away. Then they started bringing it back as it was clear that the popularity of soccer was not going away and just starting to grow, and that is the 2018 Donruss, and part of the reason I wanted to bring it up is the fact that this was the first time that they introduced the optic kind of parallel to the, it's like the base cards are Donruss branded, but then there is the these kind of optics which are mixed into the set. They also, this was kind of the rated rookie concept. There were, some rookies that were highly touted. Jadon Sancho hasn't exactly panned out, kind of a cautionary tale into prospecting too hard, I think, on someone who shows early success. Yeah, so the base Donruss, the classic, if you're familiar with the Donruss SKU, the press proofs are how the parallels are. It's kind of an interesting color scheme for that. They've got a few die cuts, the gold die cut, the gold press proof out of 75, which is a little confusing if you, unless you're paying attention. There's a press proof out of 5 and a purple press proof 101, which is, again, somewhat interesting color scheme. Checklist, it's a great checklist. A lot of players in there, primarily in their or we're in their club kits. So there are certain inserts where they're in their national team kits, including the one of my favorite autograph designs, despite being a sticker design, but the beautiful game insert autograph set is a good looking card, even with the sticker autos. But yeah, so this is like I said, one of Kylian Mbappe's first sets. Certain other players have their their rated rookies in this. The checklist, I guess the most notable ones that have panned out, I guess if you're a Canadian collector, Alphonso Davies has certainly panned out. Vinny Jr., Phil Foden have both panned out. Jadon Sancho, Kai Havertz, not so much. Federico Chiesa looked like he was going to pan out, but overall, not so much. If you're an American collector, Timothy Weah, Weston McKennie, Josh Sargent, maybe players that are interesting to follow, but none have reached mega superstardom thus far. Not sure if they ever will, but yeah. So this is a cool set. Like I said, it kind of continued on with a lot of bringing some of the NFL football and NBA basketball products to to soccer, and it's a fun checklist to dive into. There, it's a pretty wide variety of different inserts and cards to check out, but definitely a fun card from this era to dig into. All right, so that's a bit long-winded. Went through a lot of sets there. But I really thought it was worth it to at least, kind of mention a lot of these sets during this this golden age of Panini Soccer. Because, like I said, based off the print runs, players involved, these are the first sets and, playing day sets for a lot of really great players in a very relatively short period of time, which gives you a lot to kind of dig into if you want to play or collect. A lot of great collectors I follow on Instagram who've really dived into player collecting through these lineages. And if you follow them, you know who they are because they're very meticulous about collecting, certain parallels of a player. And I think that's a really fun way to go about collecting in this, during this period when the print runs were down. But yeah, so that'll do it for this episode. It was kind of a continuation from the last episode. But I really wanted to kind of get this out there and, get, a little bit of awareness of these sets for the people who, picked up collecting after 2019. A lot of these sets, they weren't, when these boxes were being ripped initially, they weren't in the space, and that was including me. So I had to go back and kind of learn, what was out there with a lot of these sets. But hopefully this kind of can jumpstart, people's discovery potentially on some of these sets that maybe they weren't as familiar with. But all right, that'll do it for this time. I wanted to remind everyone to, stay curious and keep collecting.